Oh, hell, they're calling the safety man.
Oh, y'all get your stuff on. Get everything on, man.
They're calling the safety man. I'll be in the back.
Here comes the clipboard, man.
Wonder if he brought something to eat.
Hello and welcome to Safety Man Coming, the podcast about the people behind the cones on the roadway. This episode, we continue our conversation with Robert Skinner. We talk some more about changing technology and safety in the roadway. I didn't plan it this way originally, but what Robert talks about towards the end of the interview is very topical. If you're listening to this the week that it comes out, you'll be smack in the middle of National Work Zone Awareness Week. This week occurs every year to spread awareness about work zone safety and remember the people that have been lost in work zone accidents. It's a very important week for all of us in the business. I just wanted to throw that out and ask you to make sure you listen to the end of the episode where we'll give you some tips and things to do to promote work zone safety. Now, let's rejoin the interview where we left off last episode.
One thing with my job with the highway department, I mentioned earlier, it was up to the people on the job, state people on the job, to work up the grades in order to give the contractor something to do the next day, which, it was just something that had to be done. It was, at the end of the day, you would talk to the contractor to find out what he had in mind doing the next day. And sometimes you might go a couple of days, what you want to do Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and in what order, but that'd give you something to work on. And, that was just a must. You had to have something like that. We started a job at Marianna, on Highway 44, also known as Texas Street as you go through there, residential area. There was a lot of grades, redoing everything. We were putting new storm drain systems in, drop inlets, box culverts, sidewalk.
Revolutionizing that road.
Yes. We built sidewalks, didn't get walked on.
Right. Yep.
Anyway, we were on that job, and that was one job that the contractor liked to split us up. And I know it was intentional. I mean, if he's one of them that you had to watch. Right. Well, if he's down here, working down here, he'll send somebody, you're watching what's going on there. He's liable to send somebody to the other end of the job doing something.
Yeah. What can he get by with?
Right. But anyway, at the time, I had spent no telling how many hours trying to get grades figured, ahead, so I wouldn't be holding, them up or anything. And we got a computer, the very first computer that they came out with. It was a 40, I think. Anyway, our office guy there called me one day and said, Robert, I know you've got all your grades figured on that Texas Street job. And he said, we've got a program in here that, come in next time it rains or something other, and we'll just compare everything. And what had happened when they got the computer, this is the very first computer that the states put out.
Right.
Claude wouldn't let anybody touch it except he picked one guy.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky, he was going to be the computer guy. He, and I mean, I was serious about that. You didn't touch the machine. You absolutely didn't touch it. He wouldn't do that. Well, Ricky had to go to school for, I don't know, maybe a week, because it was new to everybody. This was when they first put them out.
Right.
And, that's when they still had them floppy disks and, all that. But anyway, it wasn't too long after that. We did get rain, and I went on to Helen down there. And it took a long time to enter the data in there, but you had options. You could have grades for everything from right-of-way to sidewalk to curb to your base asphalt, binder, so, all the way across. You'd have it, from one side to the other over there. And the thing about it, you could say you want those grades put out every 1 foot if you wanted to, or every 10 feet. That's kind of what we went with, was 10 feet, unless you had some kind of a drainage outlet. Then you might want it a little bit tighter. But we were able to go in, and like I said, it took a while to enter the data.
Mm-hmm.
But once it was entered, you pushed that one button, and it would print. It'd print for a long time, but you could get it out. It was unreal how accurate Well, I guess how accurate I was.
Right.
They imagined me.
Yep.
But there was a hundredth here and there, but that was due to rounding and everything. But I told Ricky, our computer guy there, I said, "What is that? Tell me exactly what that is." It was a Zenith computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to get me one of them. I said, if I get one, can you get me that program? Oh, no, I can't do that. Claude, I said, look, I'm not wanting anything on your, on that. I just want to copy that program. I already knew he could make a copy with that.
Yep.
With that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I went and bought one exactly like the state had. I mean, the exact. And where I could do that. And that made a major difference. Now, up front, you had to spend a lot of time getting all your data in.
Right.
But that was usually, it came, the plans would come from Little Rock, and they had all these things had already been checked out and everything. And you go through the plans like I talked about earlier, trying to proofread, see if anything really stands out that's wrong, and you get all that corrected before you start the work.
Right.
So I could kind of trust the data points that was in the plans to be accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made a world of difference, though, to be able to just do that whole thing. You get a cross section of every grade point you wanted.
Yep.
Anything in there, and the state was recognizing that this is a state approved program. You can use the results that you get from this.
Yep.
And that made things quite a bit better.
A
bit better.
Yeah.
But
no more,
time.
No more sitting up all night at the dinner table.
Right. Because I could get a mile of grades worked up. They'd allowed to take a contractor 3 weeks to get to that point.
Yep.
But there were some things if we had like during the winter months, we had a job coming up, or maybe they'd started on it in late fall and shut down because of weather.
Right.
We knew what we had to get ready for. By the time they came back in the spring to work, we had all the grades worked out.
Yep.
And that wasn't just a matter of working the grades out. We actually set all the hubs. We did the whole bit. That just having that experience with the computer was really good. Now, when I went to work, part of what I did, I would check through the grades and everything. And I remember Gary was helping me a lot. Gary helping me a lot on the job around Marianna. He'd come over when he could. We'd shoot a few points here and there. Anyway, I got ready to set the grades up. I used the Excel program.
Mm-hmm.
And, on that thing, you just kind of preset your stuff up. You use formulas, and you can punch a button there, and you've got all your grades like that. And Gary had never seen that, everything. So he said, I'm kind of slow, but would you teach me how to do that? But that makes a world of difference. Gary was having to do the same thing in the motel room at night. He was having to work, and I'm sure you did too. You had to, after hours, you had to get stuff ready.
Yep.
But, that's another thing. I'm making all these calls now. I don't do that. I got in school, I hated math. Yep. I absolutely hated it. And yet, with the highway department and everything, that's basically how I made my living.
Yeah.
Dealing with math. I absolutely loved it. Doing that.
We just had to finally apply to something that you wanted to do.
Exactly.
You got X number, you got 5 apples and he's got 6 apples. Like, I don't care about apples, but,
right.
When you're out there building a road and it's like, hey, this, I'm playing in the dirt and this makes sense and I want to make it look good, then all of a sudden that math starts mathing,
Right.
And that's, you and Gary and Jim Williams were the ones that helped me a whole lot, because that's exactly what we'd have to do, right? We're doing cross sections, building these models, staking things out, and I'd never done any of that stuff. Right. So, figuring out profiles, going down the road, and then cross section going across a road and taking and putting all that together. And, we're doing interstate stuff. So now you start looking at cross slopes and how all that works, and, how it's going to tie out in the end. You can't just run the road off in the ditch, and man, that, to me, that was the stuff that you'd driven down the road, you'd seen it a million times, but you'd never really thought of it.
Right.
And then when you guys started doing that, and then showing somebody the Excel to where, hey, we're going to lay out a mile of this stuff tomorrow.
Yeah.
And exactly. As long as you got the right data to start with, and you got your formula set up, just bam, there it is.
If you have that profile grade, you know your finished profile, usually what you work from. But now if you're, you have to minus off, going down, to get your dirt grade and your base and, like that. But once you get it, it saves a lot of time, a lot of everything.
The only thing you had to be careful with the Excel or anything like that is you get in your own way. And so one of the first times I got sent off on my own, I went to Gary was taking vacation or something. I went to Northwest Arkansas, the airport, and they were pouring concrete. And so, setting nails, setting grades, all this stuff, got everything set. Boy, they're ready. And the next morning they come out and, dumping out of dump trucks, just concrete in there as fast as you can go. And boy, they get about, 75 foot down, something like that. And I'm just kind of checking some things. I was like, man, this thing's off like 4 or 5 inches. Like something's wrong. Like I've messed up, And so, there's 10 trucks lined up out there. Having to go to and be like, hey, man, I need y'all to stop just a minute. Something's wrong. And so it took me about 20 minutes, and he's sitting there tapping his finger, looking at the watch. This concrete's getting hard. And it turns out I'd got in my own way. What I had done when I had set everything up, I had right and left, which is important when you're talking about center line. I had my right and left backwards. And so all my grades were flip-flopped. And so it made it look like everything was off, but it was actually exactly like it was supposed to be. So, we went on after that. But there are a bunch of times I'd wake up and be like, oh, my God, did I get those backwards? Did I set that wrong? You get in your own way.
Well, I know on the survey end of it with the highway department, because we started out with the transit and chain level, that kind of stuff. The state's always way behind on the equipment and stuff.
Yep.
When I left the state in 2005, when I retired from there, they were still using level transit and chain somewhat, but they did have a total station that you could use, which everything else had done gone to millimeter systems and all that stuff. And when I went to work for and they started pulling that system that y'all used then, I thought, I don't know about this. I really don't know on this, but
well, I was using it and I didn't believe in it either.
But I, after being around it a little bit, I thought, man, why is the state not doing this? Mm-hmm. Why are they still relying on all that?
Yep.
As far as equipment goes, I'd mentioned earlier going to work with Lewis, on the survey, me and Jim,
mm-hmm.
and everything. And of course, that's what he had. He had a transit, an antique transit at that.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, I had my eyes were halfway decent, but I still had to have a huge magnifying glass.
Yep.
And everything. And then we had to cut line. Everything we did, we had to cut line. I mean, everything. So I got more Kaiser blade use.
Yeah.
During
you learned how to sharpen one too, didn't you?
Yes.
Because when it went dull, it went dull.
Right. After a while, he wound up buying a Beetle. If you're familiar with that, it's just a kind of like a cheap theodolite.
Okay.
thing. You could take a glass reflector or something,
mm-hmm.
And it would read the distance on that.
Okay.
But we really thought we was uptown then when Lewis got that. It would take a lot of the actual survey itself. We'd still have to do a lot of stuff, but if you're going to establish a point, you have to come from another point where you is liable to be. You may have a corner or half a mile down the road. I mean, you don't have to chain that out if you've got a line of sight to it.
Right. Yeah, especially in this area of the country where it's flat, you can see forever, and everything's on the public land survey system. It's on a square mile grids, right?
Right.
Makes it a lot easier.
It did. It made it a lot easier. And then it made it even easier when we would do a lot of stuff, maybe in the woods or something, where you could not go in a straight line. But, after doing that, and with that Beetle that Lewis had, you could triangulate a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Now, which was good, but you had to keep real good notes because it may be the property owner wanted flags every 100 feet or something. So, you go down through there, you'd flag everything as you went. You'd note what was offline, how much offset it was and everything. But that, too, got to be a lot easier as we went on, got more used to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the changing of technology It's been so much since I started till now, and there's no telling what it will be later. I know when they started putting those GPS systems on the grader, I thought, this will never work.
Yeah, I know.
But it actually did.
Yeah, it once you got it set right, it'd make a believer out of you. And we did some stuff, and we were doing soil cements. That stuff would set up good. And man, we'd go back through there and check them with the level, and we'd be within less than a quarter of an inch. And like, all right, we're doing miles of this stuff with a grader. That's impressive.
Right.
Because I was the same way. Which by the time I got into this and got out of school, everybody for the most part was using GPS, was kind of getting big, but for the most part, everybody's still using a total station. But, you had a handheld, had the program that would help you out. And so my first job was I worked for a county engineer, and so we'd do all this residential stuff in the Mississippi Delta. And, all these guys had these big hunting camps and stuff over on the inside of the levee. Well, it's all just briars and everything else. Well, they didn't want you out there in the wintertime because that's when they're hunting. So, in summer times when we'd have to go out there and cut lines and all that stuff, man, besides all the ticks and mosquitoes and snakes and all that, and cutting cane and everything, but that's where I first learned, and it started clicking to me like, all right, I'm supposed to be sitting up and shooting this line straight down through there, but I can't see it. And if I get over there, then I can do an offset. It'll calculate for me and tell me, hey, go back 3 more feet, and that's where you're supposed to be. And man, that marking lines got a whole lot easier when you could do that.
I know when Lewis started getting ready to retire, they'd already told me that I was going to move into his position at that time. But Lewis had pretty well done all the calculating on most everything. And I'd spot check some of the stuff or anything. But I wound up buying me a Hewlett Packard programmable handheld thing that you could put your data in that, and a little computer, it would do. I got a little nervous, when I knew that was going to fall on me to do that. It always really depended on Lewis. I might spot check him on something. He'd always ask for that,
right?
Which is the way most of us did. And we had one individual with us. He didn't want nobody looking over his shoulder or checking his work.
Yeah.
So we finally learned you screw up, it's you.
Yeah, that's right.
The rest of us, we would look at each other's work. But when Lewis did get to the point where we could triangulate things, and then having that thing to read the distance and stuff, that just made it so easy. I mean, compared to what we had been doing.
Yep.
The only time we would go around something prior to that, I mean, you shoot line right up to, like that cup right there would be a tree. You'd shoot it up to that tree, and then he'd want you to set you a point right there, backside on where you'd been, and turn you an angle. Try to do 90s.
Yep.
And then back. But then after a while, Lewis, why don't you just that and then see what you can project on up to?
Yep. Because every time you set up again, you're introducing error, right? Every new setup is more error.
Kidding.
And then, if you're cutting through the woods and you make that 90 off over there, how far are you really going out there, right?
Exactly.
Not near as far as you need to.
Right.
So you're just creating more and more error.
But it did when he figured he could use the trigonometry that he so hard pushed at me to learn. I mean, that was a big thing to him. You need to learn a triangle inside out.
Yep.
And at the time he was telling that, I didn't have any idea what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's unreal, though, how much math goes into lay out a job and actually the building of it, everything. A lot more math than people realize. A lot more. And like I mentioned earlier, I hated math in school. I love it now. I love math. There's very little you can't figure out if you can apply some kind of formula to it.
That's exactly right.
Now, all my math is I'm counting how many calls I'm making.
I mean, but you're still using it to make turkey calls, right?
Bet you.
I mean, you want each one of them to be the same, so you're checking dimensions and everything else. So yeah, it all still applies. As you progress along, any jobs stick out as some of the most memorable as far as what you did or weird things that happened or anything like that?
I can recall one job that we did south of Brinkley down here that was kind of different. It was another one of them gravel roads, a county road that the state was going to take so many miles of it in the system. And it was going to be, most of the time when you did something like that, you'd have to go down there and profile what's existing. And then a lot of times there's liable to be a curve that would get straightened out in the new alignment on there. And I can remember one time we got into a cemetery. Unmarked. That was really weird.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
And of course that put everything to a halt. We had to back up, and it took a long time to get all that squared away. But that was one of the odd things. But I guess most of the interstate work is where and that's how I started my highway department career, working for a contractor on the interstate.
Yep.
And just being out there, people can't realize how dangerous that is. At one time, one of the very first, sure enough, reconstruction. Now, we'd done some minor stuff out there but one of the first ones that we did, it was like 5 miles long. You started at the Cache River, or actually just a little bit east or west of the Cache River, and went 5 miles. We had to work out there with drums separating us. We'd take one lane out, and you got these plastic drums sitting here, and you got these 18-wheelers running 80 miles an hour sometimes down through there. It's just really, really, really dangerous. You have to watch everything that's going on out there. I know some of the truck drivers get real smart, and they learn that they could fishtail their trailer and they'd knock a drum into you.
Yeah.
We had to get a lot of assistance from the weights and standards boys, the highway police. They would put a halt to a lot of that kind of stuff. But to me, that was some of these interstate projects. I really like working on those. Mm-hmm. Those were, I don't know, they were good. There again, there's another thing. I'm trying to think of what year. Mid-90s, I guess.
Right.
But the way they had the thing set up with you have a drum every 100 foot down through there, and you notch out the old roadbed, and you have to redo it. You're doing that under traffic. And we had a lot of accidents, a lot of them. I wound up in court several times because of things like that, and because it was my projects that I was kind of I guess you'd call it the lead inspector on it. But after that one, it got to where they would use barrier wall from then on. A good way that we found to do it would be put barrier walls in both lanes, keep the traffic on the outsides.
Yep.
Construct lane, shoulder, median, and, get everything confined in that. While it did give you a little bit more safety. Every now and then, though, you'd have somebody smack one of them barricades, and it was bad. But seen some really, really, really bad accidents.
Yeah.
People losing their lives and things like that out there. A lot of times there might be an accident in the construction zone, but then there'd be a worse one behind it.
Yep.
Because when the traffic starts stopping, somebody's not paying attention to what's going on, and the secondary accident sometimes was way worse than the first one. Something I'd always wanted to do, and I never have done it. I've thought 1,000 times doing it, but talk to one of the senators or something and have something put in these driver's ed books to get your license on driving in a construction zone.
So we've had that conversation too, where I work now. We try to do something every year for Work Zone Awareness Week, and they always want to do. There's always an amount of outreach to it, right? We're doing it for our folks, but also we're doing it for the public to make them aware. It's like the 1 week a year where we get to talk about us and the good things we do versus the other 51 weeks.
Right.
But that's the one that I always think about too, and I wish we could do is, I assume they still teach driver's ed, but being able to go to driver's ed class and say, look, hey, these are real people out here for one, but when you see these signs, this is what it means. Because, I'd been driving a long time when I came to work, with you guys, and I didn't know what a bunch of those signs meant. I didn't know what the diagonal hash marks meant or anything. And so I think some knowledge on that, man, would help a lot of people.
I really do. I think that should be part of the, here in Arkansas, I don't know how it is anywhere else, but you have to get a book from them,
Yeah.
To study for what, that needs to be in the booklet. It needs to be there, and there needs to be some test questions on it. Because just like you mentioned, if you're not, you might not know what that means. You may see it, but you don't really realize what it is.
If I didn't know already what a dogleg sign was, I would have no reason to understand what a dogleg sign means.
Exactly.
So I totally agree, man. I don't know. I hope there's some way that somehow or another we can do that and get some education around it, because it's new drivers, but it's also older, experienced drivers. It's everybody. If you never knew.
Well, it's really, you're working out there in that traffic, and interstate particularly, they have a tendency to drive a lot faster than what the speed limits are.
Yep.
I think one thing that has helped a little bit is the fact that they're putting these big signs up that fines are double in a construction zone. And now they've got it, if they catch you on a phone, in a construction zone like that, they can get you. And it needs to be that way. I mean, you need to be watching them. Some of them may not be watching you. I mean, if you're working that close to the traffic, you can do a dumb thing and take a step backwards, and it may be your last step you take.
Exactly right.
But it's, everybody needs to be where they can go home at the end of the day.
Yep.
Safety is it's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll kind of go back to my working with, not for them at this time.
Right.
It's on one of the interstate projects out there. They would, I don't know, I forgot how many miles we would allow them to put barrels. I'm going to say 3 miles.
Yeah, I know most of the time 2 was what we could have under construction, and then whatever buffer and all that stuff we needed on top.
But we would start laying asphalt out there sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly in the summer, it gets extremely hot and everything. I'd show up on the job though and wouldn't let them start. I may come through the area, not going all the way through the job and then back, but just up to where they had everything lined up on the road and everything, and I wouldn't let them start. So somebody got out there and straightened those drums up.
Yeah.
And I got cussed, I don't know how many times for that. And that was one thing that when I was approached about going to work for them, I didn't have the best relationship with them.
Right.
I know when I went to work, when I did go to work, when I went ahead and accepted the job, everything, they took me in there, and Murray took me in there, and he introduced me to everybody. And of course, I knew Nick, and he said, you can be a and before everything was over, I can say I've been called a contractor and state man.
Both sides, that's right.
I particularly got into it with the West Memphis office because they would try to tell you to do something that you didn't have to do.
Yeah.
They'd come up with their own things. All the projects in the state of Arkansas have to fall under the guidelines of a certain book, not the spec book. There's another book on uniform traffic control.
MUTCD.
Yes. And I know that we'd get ready to do something. I don't know. I kind of oversee a lot of putting the signs out. I wanted it right. And the reason for that, because I've been in court several times.
It's funny how that helps you get that much more attentive to it.
You ain't kidding. Anyway, we were working up in the Marion area, in the residential part of it, before you got on out on highway at 64 or whatever. Well, you get in town, you can't put those advanced warning signs 500 feet apart. You just can't do it. But anyway, I got into it with some of them in the office there.
Yep.
And I had to pull the book on.
Mm-hmm.
I got into it on the road. They were going to keep us from starting something. I can't remember what we were doing, but they insisted we not start until the signs were moved. Well, Jim had gone to Missouri, and they were fixing to hold us up on that, and I knew I was right. And I called Ray, district engineer, and he wound up sending his number 2 to see what was wrong. But anyway, I wound up having to pull the book on them. I got my point across, but believe me, it cost me.
Yeah.
I would be halfway home sometimes, and I'd get a call from them that there were some barrels down. There was a sign laid over. There was something. So I finally caught on to what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, if it was all over with, I was a bad guy.
Yeah.
I'd been that way on both sides. But
everybody hates you. Both sides.
Right. Yeah, both sides. Both sides.
Yep. But that's the way it's got to be sometime. And
it has to be. You have to do your job.
Yeah, and just because somebody is the inspector for the state doesn't mean that they know everything. They're never going to make a mistake, and vice versa. So you got to be a little pragmatic sometimes. Let's figure out how to do it right.
But there's that, and the spec book. And when I started out with the highway department, this is it. I mean, you don't vary from that. This is it. But, through the years, you learn what will work and what won't work. You could break just about every contractor if you stuck exactly to the letter. Now, you don't want to get really outside that, in performing your job as an inspector.
Right.
I mean, you've got a job to do, and you can't be lax on it. You can't. You can't let something take place that's going to cause problems in the future.
Well, and the state's putting their money, into the project. You're there to make sure the state's money's they're getting their money's worth.
And that's the way they teach you too. I mean, you've been charged with this $5 million job over here. When you get on the interstate, you're talking about $30 million or something.
Yeah.
I remember one job. Well, it's not. We did a lot of work on this interstate. With, like I mentioned before, having to read these plans, kind of proofread them and everything. I know we did from Wheatley. Yeah, that section from about Wheatley on that way, we had like a 15-mile project or something. We had all kinds of stuff going on. The job had already been let, and we were trying to check quantities. And they had left like a 3-mile section of asphalt completely out.
Oh wow!
On one of those projects, and they were all bond jobs and everything. So you really had to stay on top of stuff then. I mean, you do, and that's one reason I liked the interstate work. I didn't like dealing with the traffic.
Yeah,
but I don't know. There's just something about seeing a job come together. I mean,
and you get to drive down it every day, right? And you see it, and I still, every time I come through West Memphis, every one of those bridge ends that I messed up, I can tell you which one, the ones that we got smooth, I can tell you who did that, I still know so much about that because we were there for 3 years. I was there for 3 years. You guys were there longer, but you get to see it and you can say we did that.
I wanted everything right here because I have to live here.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody knows me. They knew I'm out there, on that. And so I'm not going to say I took more pride in seeing it done right for those jobs because like I mentioned earlier, I'm on both sides there, and I want it done right. And that was one reason me and Jim got along so well because he too had that same mentality. Still does.
Yep.
I don't know, right's right and wrong wrong. I used to have the attitude that, as far as being an inspector, okay, you bid this job, you had the spec book to look at, see what you're obligated to follow that spec book and everything. And it still are. I'm not saying you do away with the book or anything, but, you got to use a little judgment. Judgment comes with time and experience.
Yep.
And you train the new man to follow the book.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to get in there and do it a while to be able to understand because it's not letting somebody get by with something. It's just, all right, this is a matter of constructability. How do we actually get this built? And that's a whole lot different than, well, I'm just going to pay you, for 2 extra loads of asphalt you didn't put down. Right. That's different. But as I travel around and work in different states and things like that, you see more and more folks that are, like you were saying earlier, engineers or inspectors, and that's all they've ever done. Like they were doing something else before that. So they don't have that background knowledge of what it takes to build the job or what it takes to do the job. And so that's seems like it's adding to challenges as far as getting questions answered or deciding on the job what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Right. I know we saw that some as, that's even been 15, 20 years ago now, but I know I see it even more now, it seems like. So those people who had all the knowledge on how to do all this stuff and build all this stuff are slowly but surely getting out of the business, and there's not a whole lot behind them that got the knowledge.
I've got a bad habit, real bad habit, and my wife gets on me all the time about it. I go through a construction zone and I start pointing things out wrong. And she tells me, you don't need to be worried about that anymore.
Drive, don't worry about it.
Right. But I do. And it bothers me when I see things going on that's not right.
Yep.
And one reason, that's my tax dollars that's spent.
That's exactly right.
And it's not just the money, it's the safety end of it. My family drives over that road. And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff safety-wise. Of course, I guess you're well aware of it. I mean, these companies, for instance, with doing the T5 every morning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a good thing. It particularly if you know what work's going to take place that day, you can put your topic on that right there and just try to make everybody aware of something.
Yeah, and it's the same, and not to make this thing about safety, But I mean, it's the same thing that we do now, right? I mean, we still teach people about a T5 today and answer 3 questions. What are we going to do today? How can we get hurt doing it? What are we going to do about it?
Right.
And if everybody knows that, we're ready to go.
Right.
And so that's the same way it is. And it's been that way for years and years at this point, right? The process is not any different. It's just the hazards out there, the things you got to deal with. There's more and more.
A lot of people don't realize that as a contractor, when you do have these kind of things, you get a break on your insurance and stuff. If you can, I guess you document the things that you're doing, everything, where you take a company that don't do anything like that, their insurance is going to be high.
I never really thought about it much when, we worked for, a big corporation or whatever, but I spent some time working for a small family, privately held company, and I was the first real safety person they'd ever had. And man, I tell you, safety doesn't make you money, but it'll sure save you money. And it's real money too when you start doing things like that and you change a culture and actually stop having wrecks or stop getting people hurt, cut way back on those things. Man, that insurance, especially for a small company like that, it's real money, sure enough. So, but yeah, we won't keep going on and on about the safety thing. It's not what I got you for. I appreciate it, but appreciate you letting me, go at it just a little bit there. Well, I tell you what, I don't want to take up all of your day. You have been very generous in a monsoon, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
So the thing that I have been, as I've talked to others doing this, so specifically from safety, but especially just in highway construction in general, the 2 things that are kind of your stock in trade are good road food places and good places to go to the bathroom. Right? Because you need to have a good list of those 2 things. Now, I know already that up underneath the bridge there before you go over the Mississippi River is not a good bathroom place. And I won't ask you to go into detail about how you know that. But have you got any good road food places that can be from the past or current that you like? And then if you're on the road traveling, whatever it is, like, for example, mine, just across the bridge from West Helena into Helena, Mississippi, is the Delma Furnace Visitor Center. Like, if I was going from Memphis to where I grew up in the Delta, that's the place to stop and go to the bathroom. So, have you got either one of those, bathroom places or eating places?
Not really. I mean, you can't really tell it now since I've lost all this weight, but just about any place to eat was good for me.
You can, obviously this is an auditory medium, so you can't see Robert here, but from when I knew him 20 years ago to where he is now, he's about 70, 80 pounds different, and he looks great right now. I'm happy for you.
I got a knee that got messed up years ago, and they told me I needed a knee replacement, but I was so heavy they didn't want to do anything at my age. If it don't work, then I'm screwed.
That's right.
But anyway, I do feel a lot better getting this weight off and everything, to the point that my knee's not really bothering me a whole lot now. So
there you go. That's a good place to be.
Maybe get out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. They just being out on the highway. I through my career, there's no telling how many miles I've actually put in. Doing that. 35 years with the state and then 8 years with and I've seen a lot.
Driven a lot of miles and probably walked a lot of miles on these roadways too.
An awful lot. But it's something that I can, particularly this area. I mean, this is where I'm from. I'm everything. I may have been on a road that we did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and yet if I drive it, I can remember. So I can't remember the whole thing, but I remember something about these different projects that I'm on.
Yep.
And something, I don't know, it's just something about knowing that, okay, I helped build that. I helped do that.
Yep.
Right now, I wish I'd get to help do this gravel road out here.
The one out in front of your house. Yeah. That'll be the last one they do,
Yeah, and you remember Larry?
I remember the name. I didn't know him, no.
He worked a couple times.
Yeah.
He's also a county judge now.
That is odd. Most people have ended up on the other side of the law from that.
Right.
Huh. That's interesting. Okay. Well, I tell you what, last question, and I'll let you get out of here. So anybody, if it just so happens anybody's listening to this who's thinking about getting into the highway business, highway construction business in any way, whatever that way is, you got any advice for them? I think we hit on early, just have some initiative, but anything above that?
You can't beat the work. I mean, it's a job. It's a job you have to take serious, but it's a job you can make a living out of doing that. It's a lot of safety issues you have to keep up with, but all in all, it's a good way to make a living. It's good all the way around. You have a good feeling over accomplishment. You look back on the things that you helped do. So I would highly recommend a road construction job, or even with the state.
Yep.
Something along that line. It's been really, really, really good for me.
Yep.
Really good.
Good deal. Well, Robert, I really do appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
I'm glad to do it.
Yes, sir.
Thanks again to Robert Skinner for giving his time for the show. You heard him mention making calls a few times in the interview. Robert's hobby now is making turkey calls. I got to take a look at some of them when we did the interview, and they look like turkey calls. I don't know. I never turkey hunted. I mentioned at the top of the show about Work Zone Awareness Week, and Robert talked about the hazards of working near traffic and how he wished new drivers could get work zone training in driver's ed. Those are some of the challenges of working in highway construction. I try not to preach too much for this podcast, but if any of y'all have a choir robe, now's the time to put it on. Think about your normal day-to-day job. Think about where you do your work. Is it sitting at a desk? Is it pulling orders in a warehouse? Is it running a weed eater around different yards? Maybe it's presenting closing arguments in court. No matter where it is, that's your quote-unquote office. That's where you make your money. Now, imagine that for the 8 to 10 hours a day you're doing your job in your office, 5,000 vehicles are going to pass within 6 feet of you while you do your work. And they're going to be running anywhere from 45 to 85 miles an hour. You don't know. Too fast to dodge, that's for sure. While you're doing this work, you're going to have your back to this traffic, standing on the rear of a machine that's belching 275-degree steam up at you the whole shift. And you have to trust that each and every one of those drivers is awake, paying attention, not distracted by their phone or their kids. They aren't under the influence of drugs or alcohol. They didn't forget their glasses or any number of other things that could cause them to be a hazard to you. Now, if that was your workday, how long would you stay in that job? Can you trust all those people in those cars? You'd have to be crazy to stay out there, wouldn't you? Maybe they are. Maybe that's a secret. But as scary and chilling as it sounds to be a screed operator on an asphalt paver, like I just described, as crazy as that sounds, for all of them, it sounds worse to be stuck inside an office all day. So I say all that to say this. For Work Zone Awareness Week, and for that matter from now on, give us a break, as in your breaks. Ice Cube said you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. We don't want to be part of your wreck. So when you see the sign that says road work ahead, you know we're up there. Go ahead and slow down some. Leave some space between you and the car ahead so you can see what's going on. Pay attention to the signage. It'll tell you what's coming up. And lastly, put away the distractions. Most likely the work zone you're driving through is less than a couple of miles. I promise it won't make a hill of beans on your trip if you slow down a bit and put down the phone until you see the sign that says End Road Work. It's not a protest, it's an advisory. You're clear of the work zone. Can I get an amen? All right, now put the choir robes up and let's talk food. My pick this week is Twin Oaks in Savannah, Tennessee. I've eaten there a couple of times recently, and the meat and 3 game is on point. There's also a coffee shop inside, so if you're like me and you have to drive 2.5 hours after filling up on meatloaf and fried okra, they can send you out the door ready to rock. So check them out next time you're doing the Civil War trails or the Tennessee River Museum. All right, that's it. If you stuck around this long, you can tell people at work that you're an honorary safety person. You've earned it. I'm proud of it. Join us next episode as we meet another person behind the cones on Safety Man Coming.